On this channel, I like to stick to the movies, but for a moment I want to praise the marketing team over at Neon behind this new film, Longlegs, as it's been a real treat to watch unfold. I remember seeing maybe only one trailer for this film in theaters, and it was a brief, minimalist trailer that didn't really say all that much. Perfect. Then I saw the cryptic posters and graphics pop up every now and then on my feed, also perfect. Then there were the early reactions that said something along the lines of, Longlegs is a throat-ripping assault on the senses that will penetrate your eyeballs and destroy your mind. People started getting weird comments on their Letterboxd reviews from someone named Mr. Downstairs. They monitored Micah Monroe's heartbeat when she saw Nick Cage in the movie. Basically, they made it seem like I might actually die if I saw this film. And now that I've seen it, Longlegs tells a pretty standard crime thriller story about an FBI agent named Lee Harker who has to figure out who is doing all this killing before he kills again. A common complaint I have, especially with the horror thriller genre, is the old style over substance thing. We've heard it all before. With the popularization of sleek, ethereal horror movies like Midsommar, Hereditary, and The Witch, a lot of horror movies have embraced this sterile aesthetic because it's proven to be pretty successful, and Longlegs is one of the most in-your-face about its style that I've seen come out of this genre in a minute. From the very first shot, it's clear that there's a serious attention to the look of this thing. Maybe it's because I got to see it projected in 35mm, which makes everything look better, but I thought this was a beautiful movie from front to back. It was stunning. Even if this is a case of style over substance, which it's not, when the style is so artfully done, I'm willing to excuse it after a certain point. Where it needs to hit hardest, though, is in the design of the villain, the killer, the titular Longlegs. Nick Cage's character, Longlegs, is barely shown in any of the promotional materials for this film. That is also a huge part in why the rollout was so successful. I wanted to see the dude, and he looked disgusting in this movie. As gross as he looked, he'd probably still be a pretty chill guy if he smelled good. He should have used this week's sponsor, Scentbird. A good fragrance is so much more than just a good scent. It boosts confidence, adds to your personality, and communicates how you want to be perceived. And Scentbird sent me a few fragrances that have totally changed the way I view fragrance. They sent me Ethereal Wave, Lover by the Maker, and my favorite, Transcendent. I really love this one. It has notes of sandalwood and watery greens and rose. For some reason, this one just really hits in the summer. There's something about the sun and the heat and the waves. It just complements this scent perfectly. Scentbird, if you didn't already know, is a fragrance subscription service where you can try a new designer fragrance each month at an affordable price. Scentbird makes it super easy to get your grubby little paws on real designer fragrances without breaking the bank. They offer subscription plans that are both affordable and flexible. It really is a hassle-free experience. They make it super easy to pause or cancel your subscription at any time. What's crazy is they have over 700 perfumes and colognes and tons of unisex options, which means you get everything from big brands like Prada and Versace to niche labels like Parfums de Marly and Roja. And with each fragrance, you get a 30-day supply, which is quite a bit. I mean, just look at how much that is. That'll last you, which makes it so that you can try it out, see if it works for you before you commit to one of the bigger boys. And if you're interested in trying Scentbird, use my code Karsten55 off or the link below to get 55% off Scentbird. You can get the product for half the price. That is just $8. That's a steal. Thank you, Scentbird, for sponsoring this video. Now let's get back into it. Where was I? Oh, Nicolas Cage. Yes, so I was both let down and more unsettled than I expected to be by this character. On one hand, the design is repulsive, but it's not necessarily anything we haven't seen before. But if there's one thing I learned from Dream Scenario, it's that Nick Cage has gotten pretty great at taking a voice into directions I don't expect it to go in, and the way this character speaks just made my skin crawl. His speaking tone doesn't land at the end of sentences like it's supposed to. It never feels like the end of a sentence. I'm trying my best to emulate it now and failing miserably. I don't know how to do it. He also does some other stuff with his voice that I can't say. It's so good and so unexpected that when it happens, you kind of leave the scene with your jaw on the floor. You'll know the scenes I'm talking about if you've seen it. But they hype up Longlegs as like this terrifying being, and I'll be honest, it was just kind of fine. It wasn't the scariest character I've ever seen. Where I think the film really shines with character design is with another character, who, again, I'm doing my best not to spoil, as I think the reveal is really fun. Acknowledging the character at all feels like too much. But like the cinematography itself, the presentation of this character and how they balance its obscurity is done really, really well. I love, love, love horror that plays with lighting and VFX in a way that makes me rub my eyes like this and go, did you guys see that? Was that real? Was I hallucinating? frustrating. It gives it a real heady feeling, convincing you that you were in fact hallucinating and the film has gotten in your head, even though you obviously weren't. That's just good filmmaking. Basically, it has a tremendous sense of restraint when it comes to this character and knowing how much of it to show. Obscurity is a huge part of how this succeeds at getting under your skin. There are so many wides in this movie. Every time I thought there would be a close-up or an insert, there wasn't. You're always a few feet away from everything on screen. And to be honest, it is kind of frustrating at first. It hurts the film in a way that I'll talk about in a second. But on the other hand, I think it really enhances the scares here. Like what was established all the way back in Jaws, the less you show of something, the scarier it is. This isn't necessarily not showing us something, but it's keeping it far away from us. We can see the violence, but we don't know everything. We can't make out the details. That's the part that makes it scary. This is a film I do recommend seeing near the back of the theater. It weirdly adds to the experience. Even the use of Nick Cage is relatively restrained. They use him sparingly, but always at the perfect time when the film knows it needs some oomph. He is in some ways a one-noted character, at least in the ways he speaks, so they use him only when absolutely necessary. All of that said, I think the marketing, while genius, did the film just a little bit dirty. I don't know what I expected, but I did genuinely expect to be horrified by this, and it was unsettling and scary, but it was way plottier than I expected it to be, which is, I think, where it falls short. I know this sounds a bit like a contradiction as I just praised it for its obscurity and restraint, which I stand by. It does have a tremendous sense of restraint stylistically, but the script here works against that element more than it should. I can excuse the exposition dump. It reminded me of how Barbarian went about its exposition in a way that feels more storybooky than it does a cop-out. No pun intended. It's more so the investigation aspects that started to feel a little tiresome, which sucks because I love police procedurals. I'm a big puzzle guy, and on paper this seemed like it'd be a horror version of Zodiac, a movie I consider to be peak Fincher. But through all of its expertly crafted style and meticulously placed clues, the film at some point forgot it had to make me give a shit. While I thought Micah Monroe did a good job with the performance, her character is kind of a slice of white bread for the first half of this thing. This is where the use of all these wide shots gets a little irritating. I feel so far away from her in every scene, and I just don't really understand where she's coming from. Which I understand is the point. It really works when they lean into it when she has that first bonding moment with the kid in her bed, which, while I'm on that note, this thing has a lot of good humor to it that works way better than it should. I laughed. But anyway, I get that she's supposed to be the way she is, but it makes for most of the investigation feeling a bit stale. And it makes sense why it's stale. The film thrives at obscurity and withholding information. This element forces the film to do a complete 180 and work in a genre like police procedural thriller, which requires dealing out a lot of information that needs to be easy to follow. Again, working against what the film is going for in the other half. It's just unfortunately a case of it not being able to succeed at both genres at the same time. I don't usually make suggestions like these, as I feel explaining what they could have done differently is really just me saying, I didn't get the movie I wanted. But I think this film would have been a bit stronger and could have actually had more fun with its style had it stayed in the past, when Micah's character was a little girl and the original killings were happening. That stuff really freaked me out. I think the quote-unquote evil characters are a lot more terrifying when they're from the perspective of a child. The tone is a lot creepier, don't have to deal with as much heavy-handed plottiness. At the end of the day, yes, you could argue this is a case of style over substance, which it's not. But when the style is this thick and committed, you get a horror film you can really live in, really sink your teeth into. It makes the next few hours after you finish this feel like a bit of a daze. Imagine going to sleep right after it. And plus, to call it style over substance would be to dismiss the unique take this has on the specific satanic horror subgenre. This does that subgenre in a really fun way. Come to think of it, there is actually quite a bit of substance to this. So if you can't tell, I enjoyed Longlegs. The expectations were a bit high, and for that reason I can't say it was a throat-ripping assault on the senses that penetrated my eyeballs and destroyed my mind, but it was a good time. By the way, apparently this guy is the director, the guy from Legally Blonde. Isn't that crazy? Anyway, thanks for watching. Go watch Longlegs and form your own opinion. And before you head out, thanks again to Scentbird for sponsoring this video. Check out the links below.